Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for clicking in the video. It means a lot that you guys keep clicking. If you guys keep clicking, I'll keep making. And today we're going to look at the 50% BIPOC initiative, I guess you could put it, put forward by CBS into Survivor, Big Brother, all of these reality shows in which you're supposed to be casting the best people, but instead now we're going to cast people based on the color of their skin. And I want to get into how it started, why it was put into place and how it has affected. I want to debunk some of the arguments made by the people who put this in place, and overall just show you how idiotic this is, in my personal opinion. I know you guys have been asking my opinion about it, so I'll give it to you unfiltered. As always, join my Discord server. We have tons of fun there. We talk Survivor, Big Brother, Amazing Race, Australian Survivor, politics, everything there. We have so much fun. You can talk to me. You can talk to each other. It's so fun there. Also, on top of that, 94% of you guys who watch these videos are not subscribed. Let's change that. It's easy and it's free. And that's it. Let's get right into the video. So after 2020, after the protests / riots, whatever you want to call them, the Survivor Diversity Campaign, and by 2020, I mean, of course, I don't want to get demonetized, but the George Floyd protests that had happened after the killing of George Floyd. After those protests and after these social movements had really gained a lot of steam during that year, and it had gotten a lot of press by the news, the Survivor Diversity Campaign Instagram account and Twitter accounts were started, and they were started by people of color who have been on Survivor in the past. And so it was started by a lot of people that you might know from Survivor, mostly Black players, but just in general, people of color from Survivor and Big Brother. And they had a bone to pick with CBS over the lack of, in their opinion, minority representation on Survivor. They thought that CBS had been unfair in casting their seasons of Survivor and Big Brother and other shows on CBS. And overall, they felt a lack of representation of their individual communities on the show. So this is one of the first tweets from the account. And so in this tweet, they say, if you can look at this graph and be okay with the cast, the diversity or lack thereof for 40 seasons of Survivor, then you are a part of the problem. Now let's look deeper into this graph and really find out how much nonsense they're talking through this graph. And I'll give you a hint. It's a lot. It's a lot of nonsense. So in the chart, we see 4 races. So obviously there's a lot more ethnicities than just 4, but they decided to show 4 probably to prove their point more. And it shows that every cast has had a majority white except for Cook Islands and Fiji, obviously because, well, Cook Islands was actually a race season and Fiji was casted to be a race season, but then was changed at the last minute. And the way that I approach this graph is by first looking at Borneo, right? Because it's the closest to the percentages on the left side. So if you look at Borneo, right, and I'm focusing specifically on Black because that's what this account is mostly about. So if you look at the red, which represents Black people casted on their individual seasons. And so if you look at Borneo, we see that in Borneo, around half of 25%. So I guess 12.5% of the cast was Black, right? And so that's 12.5 rounded up to 13. Okay, there's only 5 seasons that have less than that 13% of the cast being Black, and those seasons are as follows. There's Thailand, there's All Stars, I guess you could say Gabon, you could argue Worlds Apart. That's what, 4 seasons that don't hit that 13% mark. And the reason why I'm really harping on that 13% mark is because that's the mark of actual African Americans in America. So if you're talking about being quote unquote represented, only 5 seasons don't represent you to your exact number or more. I mean, most of these seasons have 20 or even 25% of the cast being Black. It really doesn't matter to me what percentage is Black. It matters to me if the season is good. The diversity of thought, the diversity of age is much more important to me than this like the diversity of race or gender, or to me it just doesn't help. It doesn't add anything to me. I think casting the best cast possible is number 1 100% of the time, and if you think otherwise, maybe you're the one being racist. And I didn't even plan on debunking this tweet, but I just saw it on the side, and I have to just go through this. It really not go through it. It's a pretty short tweet, but it says the show's only final 3s that are fully composed of POCs, meaning people of color, are seasons 13 and 14. So now they're no longer asking to be included or to be represented equally. Now they want to be fully in control. Like no one else can be in a final three except for them. They want only POC final threes, which to me is now going against what they're saying. They say that they're fighting against racism or prejudice, but then they're being prejudiced, saying that we want more full POC final threes, which to me is like, why do you care what color the final three is? And more, why do you care that the entire final three has to be a certain color? To me, that's the definition of racism, the textbook definition of racism. And so these people that claim to be against racism are now perpetuating it in their own posts. All right, getting back to what I wanted to talk about originally. So at about, I think it's late 2020, so about 6 months after the George Floyd, killing had happened, CBS pledged to now make half of their cast a certain color, meaning not white. So half their cast must not be white. It cannot be white by any means necessary, and they pledged to do that following criticism from past contestants who are persons of color who felt that they are misrepresented or underrepresented. And EW did an article covering it, and here's a quote from that where Sean Rector is talking, and he says, "If you don't think racism and implicit bias exists, tell me why Vesepia has been completely ignored and never received an inquiry or call or invite to even play in a season with all previous winners," Rector wrote. "Please miss me with the she was boring or not great TV BS." So the fact that he realizes what someone who is logical is going to say back to that and tries to cut you off, it still doesn't work. She was boring and she's not great TV. Those are valid points. And even like it's like when somebody says no offense, but it's still offensive. You can say no offense, but it's still offensive. And this is him calling out people who are, going to come back with logical things like, well, she wasn't fun TV, Jeff doesn't like her, and he's saying, well, no, you like can't say that. It's either about race or Vesepia should be on the show. To me, he's trying to make something that just simply isn't about race. It's about Vesepia as a TV character, and he is mad that she wasn't brought back, and he's now blaming it on her race instead of the fact that she was just not a very fun character, a pretty boring winner, and someone who was a good player. And if she had just talked to the cameras more and been more fun as a character, she's probably already been back. But because she didn't, she's not. He then goes on to say basically the exact same thing about Earl, where he says, subsequently, 10 seasons later, Earl Cole, a black man, finally won, like my sis Vesepia in Marquesas, and was largely ignored by showrunners. So I don't know what he's talking about. Earl has a glowing edit on that season. And if he's talking about being ignored to come back on the show, he's very wrong. The show has tried to get him back on for, I think, going on 4 returning seasons in a row, and he's had a conflict of interest, a commitment. I think for Winners at War, his wife is having a baby or something, and then I think for Game Changers, I think he was moving or something. There's been something that's come up every single time. This is commonly known in the Survivor community, and so for Sean to be this uneducated and just not really know what he's talking about and blaming it on racism that Earl Cole, hasn't been brought back is silly. And if he's talking about on the season, what are you talking about? Him and Yao-Man got all of the screen time on the season because they were the only 2 fun people, especially Yao-Man, but also Earl gets a glowing hero edit, like one of the best edits you could argue, aside from maybe JT, the best edit by a winner of all time. So I really don't want to hear that Earl didn't get a good edit because it's just simply not true. It's at this point in the article that they mention some of the names who I guess run the Survivor Diversity Campaign Twitter account and just that whole campaign overall. And some of them are so we have Jatia from Cagayan, which is hilarious. Then we also have Julia Carter from season 38. If you don't remember her, don't be ashamed because nobody does because she's irrelevant. But apparently she's the one who got voted out in the big live tribal in Edge of Extinction. And that's the 2 that we're told, although I'm sure that there's more that we just don't know about. And it's hilarious. They show a picture of the whitest cast that we've gotten in like 15 years. The only one that had like less than I believe 10% of black people on the season. Of course, they hand select only this one because the other 18 seasons before that and 6 seasons after that are super diverse, and they picked the one that's only mildly diverse. It's hilarious, and it's just them picking out the only specific example that proves their arguments. It's cherry picking to a T, and I mean they're not really trying to hide it, which is like the saddest part to me is at least trying to hide it or something. But no, they basically pick the only piece of evidence that really proves their point in recent years. Another thing that they show is Taylor, which is Chatia, says lazy, crazy, workhorse, and sidekick are the typical ways that Survivor portrays black people, which is disproportionately negative. We are heroes, nerds, beauties, and so much more in real life, and I'd like to see that on Survivor. This is absolute bullshit. I mean, this is just not true. Lazy, crazy. I literally cannot remember a black. I mean, I'm sure that there's been one, but the fact that I can't remember a person who's seen 40 seasons, the only season I haven't seen is Thailand, and I can't remember a black sidekick that I like at all, period. And if they were, then they were also given screen time on their own. The idea that black people are only lazy on the show, I mean, it seems like Chatia is the one who sounds racist in this case. She's saying that blacks are portrayed as lazy and crazy and workhouse and sidekick, and I think the craziest, honestly, her just being salty about her own edit, which was 100% warranted because she was 100% crazy. Sometimes you portray the show how it went, and in her season, she was just crazy. She dumps out the rice. She was giving crazy confessionals. She literally calls herself a mental patient. I don't know what you want Survivor to do except call you crazy when you call yourself a mental patient. She uses a simile where she basically calls herself or compares the people leaving her in camp alone to leaving a mental asylum patient alone. And she then dumps out the rice. This is the definition of crazy. So for her to now equate this to race again is taking something that is not racial and making it racial for the benefit of her argument. And I just want to point out one thing, but before I close it out, Sean mentions that Vecepia has not been back or whatever, and it's because of her race. Jeff Probst is someone who's definitely hopped on this. Oh, I'm a white male. I'm all for this wokeness, and he was very supportive of this 50% BIPOC rate being installed in Survivor. And it's hilarious because he's the one who's been keeping Vecepia from coming back. He hates Vecepia, and it's really because he hates Marquesas, but he's taken that out by not bringing a person who, probably should have came back. But Jeff Probst is really responsible. He's in the past said that he does not like Vecepia as a winner. It's mostly because of her lack of interestingness, if that's even a word, as a character. And so it's hilarious that Jeff, someone who's like the biggest cheerleader for Sean's argument, is the reason why Sean's argument is hilariously stupid and backwards. It's not racism's fault. It's Jeff's fault. He's the one who doesn't like Vecepia in the first place. So to me, I just thought of that in my head, and I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And it just shows that these people are grasping for straws. They're not actually thinking, with their own brains. They're just thinking through the lens of racism. They can never think of something just through the lens of real life. It always has to be proving their argument, and it's pathetic, really. It really is. That's it, guys. Is there another topic that you guys want me to cover in Survivor? Do you guys want me to cover the guys thing next or whatever? Just let me know in the comments. Again, check out the Discord server. We have tons of fun there. We do all sorts of fun stuff there. Again, none of it happens without you guys. Without you guys, I'm just a weird guy speaking in a weird microphone. And if that's, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.